before you
Wonderful.
go.
Do it.
Co-founder of Careful Feet Digital Agency, Dr. Khaleelah Jones, talking today about using AI for social media content creation, which is the Dime product that you see on the screen. So I'm hoping that we'll hear lots about that. But her agency is Careful Feet, so do find them on. What's your Twitter handle for that? Is it careful_feet?
Careful feet, just that.
Careful Feet. So I'll put a message up in a second on that. Digital marketing agency that created Dime Digital, a SaaS tool that automates social media posting and brand creation for small businesses and solopreneurs. She won the 2018 Next Woman Pitch competition, has a PhD in emerging media, an MBA, and has worked in the marketing industry for over a decade. Wow. So before starting Careful Feet Digital Agency, she was building Dime. She was head of marketing at Welltalk Inc. She was part of a team that had doubled the user base in 6 months, closed $18 million in Series B funding, and now she lives in London, so we're very glad to have her here in the UK with her lovely husband, doing yoga, reading, studying Russian history. I could go on all day about how amazing this woman in front of us is, but I won't take up your time. It's 25 past. Take the full 20 minutes, and we'll just land where we land at the end of a shorter panel. Khaleelah, welcome. Thanks for being here, and enjoy.
Thank you. I'm like blushing from that introduction. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my company and what we do, but I didn't want it to be too much of a sales pitch and a plug. So I really have tried to make things a little bit more general, to talk about just the way that the industry is moving, the digital marketing industry is moving, the way that we see it using automation. The reason that I put air quotes around AI is I think that that term can be really overused based on what different companies are doing. So we'll get into that a little bit. And then I also felt like it was really important, particularly in this kind of COVID world where we're all thinking about how people move forward in the workplace, to address the fact that obviously we are developing a tool that many people see as competitive to traditional workers, social media managers, community managers, graphic designers, and kind of how we have addressed the ethical and moral questions surrounding that. So lots to get through, but I'm confident that we can do it. So first, I'll just start by giving you a little bit about myself. Richard already did an amazing introduction, so I won't bore you with the details about myself and my love for all things Russian history. Instead, I'll talk a little bit about the two companies that I have founded and kind of the road to them, and why we have created the tool that we have, and particularly why I'm here talking to you guys, because I'm a bit of an interloper, being more kind of crafted on the business side, and how we kind of made that digital technical transformation. So it all started several years ago. I finished my time at Welltalk, and because of the networks that I'd made, I was just able to kind of use that as my meal ticket to becoming a freelancer. And after a few years of being a marketing freelancer, working kind of as a CMO for hire with different companies, it got to the point where I was in the very fortunate position that I had too much work on my hands, and I needed to hire people to help me execute on client projects. So I found myself with more or less a digital agency on my hands, but we were born distributed. We've always had team members from all over the world, which is great because that means that we can take clients from pretty much anywhere and be servicing them, because time zone is not so much of a challenge for us. And it also means that we can take the best talent and not have to worry about getting them into a physical office every single day. So that was Careful Feet Digital. We worked together for a couple years on different client projects, kind of bog standard boutique digital agency. And then about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it became really clear that our business model was only so scalable. We bring in new clients, I need to hire more people, and so on and so on and so on. And so what we kind of decided at that point was to think through how we could automate some of the processes that we were offering through, obviously, the people that were working on our team, And that's how Dime was born. So Dime is kind of our finger in the water, dipping our toe in the water to a much bigger possibility of automating all of the processes that we have through Careful Feet Digital. But we're just starting with social media and with branding. So again, because I don't want this to be just a huge sales pitch about just Dime, I'm going to weave in a little bit more about just the general industry here. So there's a lot of chatter going on about AI and social media. Again, air quotes, because I think that not everyone really understands exactly what AI is. Maybe even I don't. After hearing Areef's talk, I know a lot more though, so thank you. I think that a lot of what people are thinking about when it comes to AI is more RPA, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. But if you were to kind of Google the landscape, then you would see tons of articles coming up shouting about how artificial intelligence is changing social media marketing, but all of it is really focusing on the way that consumers are experiencing social media. So you have things like, for example, Twitter uses neural networks to crop your profile picture if you aren't so able to do that yourself in Photoshop or something like that. Or Pinterest uses their Pinstar neural networking to make sure that every image there is actually tagged to a theme so that they can show you a bunch of different images that relate to that theme. And that helps people obviously kind of plan their feeds and things like that. So there are lots of different things that people are providing, but typically this is pushed by the social networks themselves, and that's really focusing on the user experience and the user interfaces of the social networks. So maybe it's more boring. I don't know why, and maybe we can have a good conversation about that. But it just does seem like not so many other companies are focusing on kind of the other side, the way that businesses, particularly small businesses and brands, are using social media and trying to innovate in that space. I think that probably has a lot to do with the fact that right now there's a lot of obviously money going to these big tech firms, and so it's quite hard to find good developers who can work outside of that space and are interested in coming to work for early stage companies such as Dime to try and take this on from the other side, from the B2B side. But anyway, so yeah, when I Googled around to try and pull articles for this presentation, I actually could only find one, and even that one was all companies and all kind of processes that I already knew about, and none of them were really that compelling. There's my plug for Dime. So I find this surprising because we all know about the benefits of social media for businesses, kind of on the business rather than the consumer or just general user side, the increase in brand awareness, the increase that has in your sales or lead generation, getting traffic to your website, because for some people, that's actually how they monetize their business. So it is really surprising that people aren't trying to automate this more. And we'll talk about some of the ethical reasons and things towards the end of this. But just from a pure kind of business standpoint, that's something that we've really been focusing on, because the space for this is really, really ripe. If you're looking for a business idea, maybe I shouldn't be talking about this because you'll come and be my competitor. But to kind of just bridge that gap and talk about, well, do businesses even want this or need this? These are the issues that as a digital agency, we heard all the time. People who just don't have time to do things. Creating high quality, good content, it takes time, right? People who just don't know what to say. Or who to say it to. So they don't really have an idea of what networks to use because they aren't sure if the people that they're trying to reach are on those networks. If they do know those networks, or even if they don't, they have no idea what to actually say in their posts, and they feel maybe uncomfortable about putting themselves out there. And then also people who are just so resource constrained that they either don't have the budget or even the internal knowledge to execute campaigns well. So the amount of times that I've heard people who are just I don't even know where to start. It feels like this huge beast. These are all issues that, again, I think make it worthwhile to consider automating social media from the business side. So here are some of the things that when you look at kind of the automation landscape, you see. And again, this is not a huge plug for Dime. There are lots of people out there who are using intelligent automation in one form or another. So there's probably ones that everyone here is familiar with, like Hootsuite or Sprout Social, that use RPA. Obviously, all of the kind of ad espresso and things like that. There are integrations with their backend, the API integrations, other analytics platforms that crunch the data and are starting to actually be able to give you an opinion on what to do with that. So for example, Later, that offers examples of like when is a good time to post based on what times your followers are online. Hootsuite's building a chatbot. I mean, I could go on. So the landscape is patchy, but actually quite rife. People are trying to solve this problem. But I find it really interesting that when we talk about that, it always does, again, come back to the benefits for the consumer rather than the benefits for the business, and what the benefits for these could have for the business really are. And so here we get to, I think, why that's happening, and kind of, yeah, I think that before we talk a little bit more about Dime and exactly what we're doing, covering over some of these concerns is really important. We'll start with the positive, because I always like to start with that, particularly in COVID and kind of the post-COVID world, as people are cutting their budgets and they're cutting their workforces. Stuff like this is super important, right? Because small businesses still need to get their voice out there. They need to let people know that they're there, and they're going to become even more resource constrained. All the problems that we've just discussed are kind of just going to be put under a magnifying glass. So processes that can be automated using tools that can help them with that are obviously really important. But on the other hand, there still are issues, and most of those are, from my experience at least, around misunderstandings or, the context of what is actually offered by a lot of these tools. So things like concerns over authenticity. The amount of times where I talk to somebody and they say, oh, well, we would use Dime because we're obviously writing content on their behalf automatically, but how do I make sure that that's actually authentic to my own brand voice? I hear that a lot. I also hear a lot of information around, what if I actually don't have the content to feed the beast, to provide your system to kind of teach it how my brand would talk and what to say? How do I go about that? Just kind of intimidation around words like automation or AI, and the amount of times that I talk to investors or users and they just are like, no, I shut down. I don't want to use something that is automated. And then obviously there's the resistance or suspicion from marketing specialists or generalists, at really anybody, for around, this taking over their jobs. And so I think that that's also something, and that's why I want to address that in a little bit, that we have to be really mindful of as we build out these tools. So all of that is to say that while there are some really interesting things that are going on, and I will be coming in with my pitch about Dime in just a second, it's not going to take, these tools are not going to be taking over 100% of people's jobs right away. And here are just some of the reasons why. Content curation, so here's my pitch for Dime, is something that's really important. So what we do at Dime is we're completely automating the process of social media creation, from finding the content for someone to writing that content, or if it's an Instagram post, putting together the visuals to actually posting it. But it's really important to actually show high quality content. A lot of people are obviously using social media to become a thought leader in their space. And if you're showing kind of shady content, then obviously that doesn't help. So one of the things that we actually make sure that we do is have a really big human element up front, where we're actually putting in all of the content that we then can cull and post on the user's behalf. So the content is actually, we have amazing interns who go through thousands and thousands of content sources and basically put in only the best content that then can be read and scanned in OCR to be actually created into a post. Also, the creation of long form copy. That's something that we're testing out a little bit, but this is a little bit related to multi-layer conversations in real time, but it's very hard right now for us to have really high quality long form copy. So for example, I'm sure we've all seen those people who love to blog about their lives on Instagram. We probably are not going to be able to see, my business or another automation business do that and make it sound absolutely as fluid and absolutely as emotive as a human would. Also, there's lots of feeding the beast. So as I mentioned before, we not only are automating written posts, so like what you would see on Facebook or on Twitter, or the kind of content side of Instagram, but obviously on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter too, you can have images. So actually all of the image elements are designed by real designers, and then we turn that over to actually be assembled. And so I think that that's something that's really important too. The high quality of kind of those initial designs is a huge USP and something that we really need to stand by. And again, I don't think that, we can turn that over to be fully automated in the near future. And then, as I mentioned before, kind of customer service and multi-layer conversations. For someone to, there's nothing that replaces like a human being empathetic and talking to you if you have a problem, or even if you just want to share something. And so again, I don't think that this is kind of speaking to Naima's point earlier, like a pie that, if you take off some slices, there's less left. I think that we need to look at this a little bit more kind of like Arif showed us earlier, as kind of something that's trending upward, and it can actually kind of go forwards and backwards too. It's a little bit of a moving target depending on what your objectives are. So even though we aren't able to automate completely, lots of businesses are coming and stepping into this space and trying to take on little bits and pieces here and there. And again, as I mentioned, I think that there are a lot of reasons why everyone's focused on one little thing. So again, so that it didn't feel yucky and like just a big sales pitch, I included other businesses, not just mine, that are working in this space. So just to kind of, again, like wrap up and talk about kind of the ethical aspects of this, I wanted to just speak a little bit about how we work, both from the perspective of our team and from the perspective of our customers. So as I mentioned earlier, some of that reticence could really be probably from people who are a little bit worried about, basically technology taking over their jobs. That's something I hear about a lot. And so something that we do internally is we make sure that it's really clear that actually there will always be a place for humans in our business, that we call it feeding the beast, but we always need people at multiple levels. So interns who are just doing like content curation and, quality assurance, designers who are actually designing things, all the way through to developers who are actually helping us push the envelope here. We need people at all layers of that. And so actually, if anything, we can see that growing rather than shrinking. So even though we're trying to automate our agency out of a job, it's not automating people out of their jobs. It's just changing that role. And then for our customers, particularly because most people don't know a lot about this space and they get a little bit anxious when they hear like, oh, there's not actually humans involved, we really try and reinforce that. And so one of the things that I think is so interesting about us is that we really focus on the people who are behind our product, and rather than the technology that's behind the product. And that's just, a brand preference, but we're one of the only tech companies that really do that. And that really helps, I think, change that paradigm to make it feel less like faceless robots taking over and more like we're just trying to make things more efficient and streamlined, and at the end of the day, a little bit more cost effective for consumers.